2006, 2009, 2011, and 2018. The 4 years where Drew Brees was named a finalist for the MVP trophy, and also the 4 years where he came in second place. Surprisingly, Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, has never won an MVP trophy. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Drew Brees all played in the same era, and all of them dominated and broke tons of records.
There's only one word that comes to mind: greatness.
Those four set an absurd standard that just cannot be replicated nowadays. But among those four legendary quarterbacks, Drew Brees is the only one without an MVP to his name. Brees has been a finalist for MVP 4 times in his career and has never won it, which is actually a record in the NFL. The reason that Brees never won any MVP trophies is, at its core, because of extremely bad timing. But there's also some other factors that came into play. Factors like the MVP award meaning something different every single year. But even then, I believe there's one season that Brees had a really strong case for winning this prestigious trophy. Let's take a look back at all 4 of Drew Brees' MVP worthy seasons and find out exactly why he didn't win a single one. (2005) New Orleans had just been hit by a Category 5 hurricane named Katrina. Everything had been destroyed, and everywhere it was filled with water. The Superdome, the Saints Stadium, was still standing. However, it would be impossible to play in its horrible condition. As a result, in 2005, the New Orleans Saints would be forced to play home games in other places, like LSU's Tiger Stadium, the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, and even at the Giants Stadium. Home field advantage really did not exist for this team, and with everything going on, it really is not surprising that they ended the 2005 season with a record of 3-13. It wouldn't be until the 2006 season that the New Orleans Saints would return home again, but this time they were different. The Saints had hired Sean Payton, an unproven assistant coach from the Cowboys, as their head coach. They also took a gamble in signing a quarterback that had a rough start with the Chargers. A quarterback that was also coming off a horrible shoulder injury that many doctors said wouldn't allow him to throw a football ever again. But the Saints front office, Sean Payton, and the fans really believed that the young Drew Brees could be their guy.
In every community, you find that there's a lot of areas that need help or that sort of thing. So we're just going to kind of see where we're needed.
The 2006 season was truly a special one. The Saints started the season winning the first 3 games, including blowing out their rivals, the Falcons, in the home opener, and creating one of the best moments in Saints history. The Saints ended the season with a 10-6 record, and Drew Brees had himself a pretty good first year, throwing for 4,400 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and also completing 64.3% of his passes. Drew's performance this season was recognized as he made the Pro Bowl and even made first team All-Pro, the first and last time this happened in his career. But more importantly, Drew Brees was voted a finalist for the MVP trophy. Although his stats weren't the best for quarterbacks that season, the impact he had on the team was glaring. The year prior, in 2005, the Saints had a record of 3-13. In just one season, they completely turned it around. It was obvious that Drew Brees made a massive difference and was a crucial part to the Saints' success. Unfortunately for Brees, running back LaDainian Tomlinson, his former teammate, also happened to have a historic year, with 1,800 rushing yards, 500 receiving yards, and 33 touchdowns. He scored 33 touchdowns as a running back. There was never a chance that Brees was going to win MVP that year, but he did have a really good chance at winning it 3 years later. The 2009 season was no doubt the best season in Saints history. The Saints ended the season with a record of 13-3, clinching the first seed in the NFC, and Drew Brees was fantastic this year. It was probably the best season in his career up to that point. Brees threw for almost 4,400 yards on a 70% completion rate, and also threw for 34 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. The only accolade that Drew Brees got this season was being named to the Pro Bowl. He was named a finalist for the MVP trophy, but Peyton Manning ended up winning the award. This award could have honestly gone either way. Manning and Brees had similar seasons, but I believe that Drew Brees had the edge over Peyton Manning. Let's take a look at their cases for MVP. The first thing that voters look at is who had the better record in stats. The Saints had a record of 13-3, but that's because Drew Brees sat out the last game of the season, as they already had clinched a first seed. So in reality, Drew's record was actually 13-2. On the other hand, Peyton Manning had played all 16 games, even after clinching the first seed after game 14, so Manning's record was 14-2. Individually, Drew had the superior and more efficient season. Brees did have 100 yards less, but he had more touchdowns, less interceptions, had a better completion rate, had a better passer rating, and a better quarterback rating. Drew Brees was better in almost every metric. Now let's look at the situations of both of these players, because another thing voters take into consideration is who did more with less around him. Peyton Manning had some elite weapons to throw to. He had wide receiver Reggie Wayne, who made the Pro Bowl that year, and tight end Dallas Clark, who made the Pro Bowl and was named first team All-Pro. They both had more than 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns each. On the other hand, Drew's receivers did not receive any accolades. His main target was wide receiver Marcus Colston, who had 1,000 receiving yards. Brees also had Devery Henderson with 800, Robert Meacham with 700, and Jeremy Shockey with almost 600 passing yards. But the main thing that really hurt Drew's chances of winning the MVP trophy is the fact that the Saints had a pretty good rushing offense, while Peyton Manning had one of the worst rushing offenses in the entire league. As you probably know, it's pretty hard to have a good passing offense without having a good run game. Drew had the better season and was a better player than Manning, and it wasn't particularly close, but voters thought Manning was more valuable. I wouldn't have a problem with that, as it's literally called the Most Valuable Player Award, but the thing is, this award has a different meaning every single year. In the 2008 season, Peyton Manning would win the MVP award despite there being 3 quarterbacks that had significantly better seasons. The reason they didn't win is because Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers had 8-8 records, and Kurt Warner had a 9-7 record, while Manning had a 12-4 record. Funny thing is, Rivers and the Chargers still made the playoffs and actually beat Peyton Manning in the wild card. That year, the MVP award just went to the player with the best stats on one of the best teams. Since Brees, Rivers, and Warner didn't have a good enough record, they never had a chance of winning it, even though they were infinitely more valuable and better than Manning that season. So it's crazy that just the very next season, the criteria changes and the award actually goes to the most valuable player this time. So what do you think? What is the MVP award to you? Is it just a glorified Offensive Player of the Year award, the player with the best stats and a good record award, or is it actually the most valuable player award? 2011, the year where Drew Brees led one of the most dominant offenses, not just in Saints history, but of all time. The Saints offense was putting up an average of 34 points per game, and this offense racked up a total of 7,474 yards, the most in NFL history. They were steamrolling teams in the regular season. This was by far Drew Brees' best season in his entire career, but at the same time, it was also Aaron Rodgers' best. Drew Brees threw for 5,476 yards on a 71.2 completion rate, breaking the record for both single-season passing yards and single-season completion rate. Brees also threw for 46 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. He led the Saints to a 13-3 record, good enough for the 3rd seed. Yeah, 2011 was wild. Drew Brees and the Saints would have had the best offense in a historic season if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Rodgers threw for 800 yards less, 1 touchdown less, but also had 8 less interceptions. Rodgers was more efficient, and he also led the Packers to a 15-1 record, despite having the worst defense in the league. You could make an argument that Brees could have won the MVP trophy, but the majority of voters knew that considering Aaron Rodgers' situation, he had the more impressive season. 2018 was the very last year Brees would be a finalist for the MVP trophy. 2018 was also the last good chance that Brees had at winning another Super Bowl. This season, Brees was on pace for a monster season, potentially his most efficient season of all time. Going into Week 13, Brees had accumulated 3,135 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions. On pace for almost 4,600 passing yards, 42 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. Brees had been incredible up to that point, so much so that he was a clear-cut favorite to win the MVP. However, after that Week 12 game, Brees' stats completely fell off a cliff, throwing for 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in the remaining 4 games he played. The Saints still ended with a 13-3 record, but Brees fell out of the MVP favorite spot and would fall to 2nd place for the 4th time in his career, losing to Patrick Mahomes, who without a doubt had the better season. Those were the only 4 times that Drew Brees was a finalist for MVP, and how he lost every single one of them. It really is crazy how Brees never won a single MVP in his career, But not everything is bad for Brees, because even if he didn't win the MVP trophy, he did win two things significantly more valuable: the Super Bowl MVP and the Lombardi Trophy.